Hi there, my name is David Kenney. Welcome to Light from Above. Glad to have you with us today. We have a special guest in the studio with us. We have Mike Madden. Mike is from Wadsworth, Ohio, so we're very excited to have him. Mike, glad that you can be with us on the program today.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Mike is he's in a series of lessons right now, a gospel meeting. We'll show you the flyer. Fortunately, by the time you see this interview, the meeting will be concluded. But we've been having a very good meeting. We've had the sojourners here. Mike was instrumental in helping us get a group come up from Marshall, Texas, is where they're based out of, although they live in different places, to come and help us knock doors. And we have already exceeded 2,000 doors that we've knocked. I've met some people in the community. I've either met them or their dog or whatever it happens to be when you go door to door. So we've enjoyed that very much. And Mike, what's it feel like to be back in Wadsworth?
Oh, it's wonderful. It's always good to come home and work with the church that you grew up with, come back to your hometown, help your hometown to know the gospel, know about the Church of Christ and what we're all about.
And now Mike's been here, born here, what year? That'd be 60.
Well, I was born in the old Wadsworth Hospital, the corner of Pardee and Garfield. Now it's the Altar Care today. That's where I was born. Went to Franklin School, Isham School, Lincoln School, then graduated here in 1983. So.
And you've seen a lot of changes, obviously, in the town. It's a bicentennial year for the city of Wadsworth. And we dug through, between Mike and myself and some others, we dug through some old photographs to show you of the church building, and we'll show you some of those, and maybe you can tell them a little bit what they're looking at.
Okay, this is the church building, I would say back in the 60s, and on your left, that was the preacher's house, and that was the original building, of course, on your right. Back in 1982, I believe, myself and 3 other members of the congregation tore down that house so that we could start making room for the new expansion, the new fellowship hall, and the classrooms that were underneath. And what was interesting, when you tore down that house, inside the bricks, there were newspapers of what was then called the Akron Times-Press, and the date was 1937. It was interesting looking through those. I don't know what happened to those papers. I don't know if someone took them or what, but I would love to have kept them just for, for the sake of history.
Now we have another picture of the backside of the building.
Yep.
And you can see, obviously, the property a little better from the other side of it. Of course, there's a lot of that's parking lot now. Some of it's wooded area and as well. So there's been a lot of changes. And then we have another photograph. This is actually a postcard that we mail out to people, even to this day. It's sort of nostalgic, retro kind of a postcard. But we actually, the congregation back in the day, ordered so many of them because back then printing something like that was obviously a big expense. So we have several of them around. So we mail them out to our visitors, and so they can, it's sort of nice to get something that looks old. And so this is the congregation, another picture of that. And then we have another photograph. This is the addition that you brought this picture in, and why don't you tell them a little bit about the layout of the building as it appears in this photograph.
Okay, that was taken right after, I think right after the dedication we had in 1982, and of course right here you see the front now, it's much different, and on the new side, like I said, that's where we have the fellowship hall upstairs and the classrooms downstairs. There was also some renovating done on the inside where the hallway is now. There were 2 classrooms in the back of the auditorium. They were taken out. Something else I might mention as you were looking at those 2 other photographs from the building in the front and also in the back. Back in about, 78, 79, I used to mow the church lawn.
Oh, wow.
And it took me about 2.5 hours with a push mower, and I got $5 for doing it.
Well, there you go. That's good
so
money
times have changed. Yeah, it was quite a bit of money. But
that's 5 gallons of gas.
That's right. And I rode my bike, up doing it all the time. But yeah, I really enjoyed doing that.
And of course, we'll show you what the building looks like today. It's a very pretty building. There's a lot of memories there. Of course, the church, as we know, is not the building, it's the people. So we're glad to have Mike in, because Mike knows a lot of members that have attended here. Some have gone on, and some are still with us, and some have moved away, and different things. So as I mentioned, he's a 1983 graduate of Wadsworth High School. We have some pictures here to show, like your cap and gown. And then tell them about this next picture. I believe it's the one with you in your car.
Yeah, that was first car I bought. Actually, that was my parents' car at first. They bought it at Jack Summer Chevrolet. Of course, it's no longer in existence. Jack Summer, by the way, was a mayor here in Wadsworth at one time. But anyhow, they bought that car in 1975. It was a 73 Chevelle, 2 years old. I bought it from them 9 years later. That's the longest my dad ever kept a car back then. And I bought it from them. And I started driving it back and forth to college. Drove it on preaching appointments. Also used it to do personal work. I mean, the car, the body on it was getting pretty rough, but the engine and transmission was great. And I drove it for another 3 years, and then the body and frame was starting to give way. I've got an older brother that's a mechanic. He said it's probably time to retire that car, which I did. So,
now,
yeah.
you were telling the story about you selling the car and what happened to it? I always thought it was sort of funny story.
Yeah, I sold that car in 1987, and what happened after it was sold, the person that bought it, the car was often seen at bars. And one of my fellow preacher friends, Don Cooper, who used to preach here at Wadsworth, he used to kid me saying, "I saw that old car of yours at the bar the other night." And sadly, it had on the back of it Ohio Valley College, where I went to school at. So.
Yeah, Ohio Valley College is down there in Parkersburg, and
Yes.
Christian school, and so yeah, I imagine that would be something you probably want to go and peel off. You know, some of those stickers when you had a chance.
Oh yeah.
We've got another picture. This is you and Dale Roth. This
Yes.
is, I believe, this was the newspaper was going around taking pictures.
This was Easter Sunday, and it was 1983. And as you can see, right behind Dale, there is some snow. So it was somewhat of a white Easter. And back then, I don't know if the Wadsworth still does it today or not. They go to different churches on Easter Sunday and take pictures, you know, for their quote Easter services. Of course, you know, in the Lord's Church, we celebrate Easter every Sunday by recognizing the resurrection of Christ. But a reporter came in and asked Dale and I if we'd come out for a picture. So it ended up in the newspaper. Should point out Dale Roth has been a song leader for over 50 years. He's been with this congregation just about during that time period. I'd say a good 50, 55 years.
And Dale's an excellent song leader. He's been leading singing during the meeting, and he often says, "I've been blessed with a voice," and no one disputes that.
That's right.
He does an excellent job, so we're very thankful to have him to lead singing for us. Mike grew up in the congregation. He became an associate minister. We have a picture of him behind the pulpit there at Wadsworth back in the day. And Mike is, I've been introducing him as a hometown favorite, you know, around town, and trying to get people to come out to listen to him and hear him. Now, tell him a little bit, you know, when you left Wadsworth, where did you go then?
Okay. Well, let's see. I went to Ohio Valley College, of course, after I left Wadsworth. Graduated from there in 1988. And then began my full-time work at Summerfield, Ohio. Was there at Summerfield for 5 years down Noble County. Noble County is, I guess you would say, number 87 in the 88 counties in Ohio. You know, it's the next to the smallest county. But you know what? That was an experience, working in a small community like that. I mean, Wadsworth is now 22,000. The town of Summerfield was about 300 people. And so it was a big experience, you know, going from such a large city down to a little small rural community. But one thing about that community, and I've often said this, it was like the little Mayberry, like on Andy Griffith's show. Everybody in the town knew everybody. They knew me. You could walk down the street, feel safe. And what was interesting, in that little town, we didn't have any law. The law was the mayor. And the mayor at that time was a female in her 70s. But if there were situations that occurred, people in the town knew how to take the law into their own hands.
Sure. Yeah, we have a picture here of you in the Mission Club, 1987. Yes. Of course, many people aren't going to recognize any of these people, but you're right there in front of, right above the word club there.
Right.
And then you have Charles Abbey, the one to the far right, who was the director of the school and the Bible department and all that. So. Very highly respected individual among Churches of Christ.
Yes.
Then we have some pictures from the church when you worked, Latrobe Street.
Yeah, that's in Parkersburg, West Virginia. The Parkersburg area has a lot of congregations, a lot of large ones, and they do provide bus services from the college to services. I went to a few large congregations, excuse me, but I chose Latrobe Street the second year, and the reason for it is because they gave you opportunity. The church there was like 40 people, but they gave you opportunity to participate in the services, to preach. And then about 3 years after I was with the church, they were in the process of selecting elders. They asked me to be on the elder screening committee because they thought, you know, this will be good experience for you later on in your ministry. And they kind of gave me the title student minister. But this was kind of where the building was at. It was in a little bit of a rough section of Parkersburg. But you know what, when I would help out in door knocking in that area, I never felt threatened or anything. There was a few rude responses every now and then, but that can be, you know, anticipated in any community
Sure.
that you're with.
Absolutely. We have a picture of your office here, which is like a little white building, and that you can see on the next picture we have here. Oh, I'm sorry. This is a picture, and this is in the white building. Now, who is this?
Okay, this is my wife, Jane. This was our engagement picture back in 1987. She was not a student at Ohio Valley College. We met through the college. Her mother-in-law, or shall I say her mother, who became my mother-in-law, was the manager of the student center who I worked for. And then later in the library I worked for her as well. I knew her sister, so that's how I was introduced to Jean.
Well, great.
And we've been together now 26 years.
And Jean's here with us this week.
Yes.
We're really glad to have her. And I always liked her maiden name, which is
Cutlip.
Cutlip. I thought that's a great name. And then we have some pictures from your graduation. You graduated from Ohio Valley College in 1988 with a bachelor's degree in Bible. And then once you did that, we have another picture of you and Jean. And, and then you go on to Summerfield.
Yes.
So you go on and you do some work there at Summerfield, and this is a picture of the building there, and maybe this is the place that has, is this the place where it has your office in the separate building?
Yeah, that's my office right there. Yeah, the building which you just saw prior to that, that was the office. That was at one time a garage, and as a matter of fact, behind it there was still another garage, and one of the members parked a 1962 Ford Falcon in there.
Wow,
I kind of thought that went with the job when I moved there. I thought maybe this is my courtesy car. But no, that was the office, and the one thing about it, it had an old stove in it. I had to fire it up during the winter months, and you just had to just barely open that valve, and I mean, it was nice and toasty in there. But if you didn't have it on, if you went in there, it was ice cold. But really the office was more than what I needed at the time. I was just starting out as a preacher, didn't have a whole lot of books, but it served as a classroom from time to time and other activities that we had within the church there.
Then we have a picture of I believe you preaching at the auditorium.
Yeah, that's at Summerfield, correct. Yeah, I was using the old chalkboard sermon.
Got a nice green chalkboard. We have a green chalkboard. They tease me when I use it. They say, well, that's an old one because it's green and it's usually black now.
Yeah. And that's really a thing of the past anymore. You know, we went from chalkboard to overhead projectors. Now we're to PowerPoint.
That's right.
I wonder where we'll be in the future now after PowerPoint.
Yeah, that's really, a lot of things have changed very rapidly.
Yeah.
And then, obviously you have a lot going on, and here we have a picture. This is Don Cooper. We've had Don Cooper on the show and interviewed him, and been a preacher here, Wadsworth from '85 to 2005. Obviously, he was here a lot of part of your life, and I'm sure he had a big influence. And tell him what's going on in this picture here.
Okay, well, this is our wedding day. Don Cooper I worked with as an associate in 1985 and again in 1986. And even after I'd left Wadsworth, went on to located work, I'd came back on a few occasions, held meetings when he was the preacher here. But Don was a mentor to me, still is. I can always depend on him for some good sound advice. And he married Jean and I on August 13th, 1988. Matter of fact, Jean likes to tell this story. There were 3 preachers involved in our wedding and a total of 15 that were present on our wedding day. And Don did make the joke afterwards. He said it took 3 preachers to marry Mike Madden.
So it's stuck, though.
Yeah, it's stuck. You got that right.
So you've been married now for how long?
26 years last month.
Just quizzing you, just to make sure.
Yeah. You don't forget.
Yeah. So there's a nice picture here of obviously you have Mike's parents on one side, and I guess it's Jean's parents on.
No, this is my family, my immediate family.
All right.
Yeah, and that's my 2 older brothers. They're both on both ends here. My 2 nieces who are now growing up in their 30s. My sisters to the right of Jean, and my brother-in-law at the time, and then my mom and dad on to the left of me.
Okay, great. And then here's some pictures we have from the homecoming that Wadsworth had, and this is a group of preachers. And why don't you, I mean, you don't have time to comment on all of them, but there's a couple of them you mentioned to me that were particularly special to you, in addition to the Don.
Yeah. Well, Rob Albright on my left, he's the one that baptized me. Right behind me on the second row is Jack Gladwell. Brother Gladwell baptized my parents. And to the left of Brother Gladwell is Glenn Martin. Glenn Martin is one of the, I guess you'd say, original members of the congregation. He and his wife Loretta helped start the church here. And what's interesting, he retired from secular work in 1977, and he went into full-time preaching. And what's interesting here, Rob Albright came from Elizabeth City, North Carolina, take it back, Elizabeth City, North Carolina, and Glenn took his place there. Oh. And so Glenn preached full-time in his retirement. Of course, he passed on in 1991, but he certainly had a very powerful influence in the church here at Wadsworth, and really helped build up the church in a lot of ways. He was also heavily involved in personal work too. Sat down, taught a lot of home Bible studies.
Great. And then we have a couple other preachers here, Jim Mouter, Jim Duty, and tell them a little bit about whichever Jim you want.
Okay.
Or both of them.
Well, Jim Duty, he's really the first preacher I can remember. He started preaching at Wadsworth in 1965. I was just 2 years old at the time, so he's the first one I can remember. However, I did my internship under him in 1987 over at Medina. He preached there for at least a good, I'm thinking 32 years. And then Jim Mouter followed Jim Duty back in 1969.
And then we have some pictures here. Of course, you have Jan Cooper, Don Cooper's wife, and then your wife, and then another friend there, Anita Moats.
Yeah.
This is the homecoming that they had back in 1988. So.
Correct.
This is the fellowship hall that was new, and I believe is that Rob in the background there?
Right, so, that is him in the background. Correct.
Yes, I know we have some of these sermons on videotape, VHS. We'll have to get them converted to DVD. We won't be able to watch them here pretty soon.
Yeah, that's true.
Technology. So now you ended up going to Georgia.
Yeah.
Now tell them a little bit about Georgia.
Okay. After we were at Summerfield for 5 years, 1988 to 1993. Moved to Cumming, Georgia. That's 40 miles north of Atlanta. And I always make the joke that I kind of moved back into civilization after being in a little community like Summerfield. But Cumming, Georgia, at the time when I moved there in 1993, it was starting to become a very fast-growing community. It was becoming a mini Atlanta. In 1995, there were over 42 housing additions in construction. And it was a difficult place to follow up on visitors, all because new streets were popping up all the time. They were not on the map.
Yep. And
today, it'd be interesting to know if you could even find them on GPS. But we worked with that congregation for 13 years, 1993 to 2006. Now this picture here is in front of the old church building. We built a new building about 5 years later.
Moved into that here,
and that's the building under construction. And so we kind of outgrew the building. Really, we were kind of in an ideal situation. There was a business beside us that wanted our property. We had 3 acres, and they gave us the ideal price. Of course, back in the 90s, the economy was doing quite well, and so we sold the building and property and then moved out to this new location. Of course, right there is the new sign for the new location. And like I said, moved there in 1998, and about, I think it was 2002, 2003, we added a fellowship hall to that building. So
now Mike's also, he does a lot of work trying to be involved in the community, because I mean you have to be out with the people to meet them. And I think we have a picture here where you did a little bit of a stint with the Kiwanis Association.
Yeah, I'm a member of the Kiwanis Club, been in it since 1999. Matter of fact, a member of the church got me involved in Kiwanis. I've served as a board member, been a past secretary, past president, and this is the night I was being installed as president. And I'm still with the Kiwanis Club down in Florida. The nice thing about the Kiwanis Club, like you said, it does give you an opportunity to get out into the community, but I think it also gives you an opportunity to be able to make friends in the community. And the nice thing about it, I've also had people from the Kiwanis Club come and visit our services. We had a Community Appreciation Day one time, so I was able to invite many of the Kiwanians to come to the Appreciation Day. Bring a Friend Day. Matter of fact, we're getting ready to have another one down in Florida. And so there's the Kiwanians I can turn to invite to services. And there have been times I have visited some if they've been in the hospital or if there's some kind of a situation they're dealing with in their family. It's good to know it's good to know that they know that I can be there for them and help them out whatever way possible.
We brought some family pictures in, and
Yeah.
why don't you tell them who's in the picture?
Okay, to my left is my father, Ed Madden. Should mention he worked at the PCA down at Rittman, so there might be some folks left from the PCA. Of course, the PCA is now gone. It was tore down, I believe, within the last year. And then that's also my grandfather, Edward J. Madden. We're behind, or rather behind us is a train. I've kind of, liked trains. My grandfather worked on the railroad, Pennsylvania Railroad. And I should also mention my wife, Jean, likes owls. So trains and owls, and our house has become known as the Hoot and Toot House. Yeah.
Now show them, here's this other picture.
Yeah, and I think this museum is down in Cuyahoga Falls, if I remember right. It was taken back in 1975. I was about 11 years old at the time. And again, that's my father and grandfather behind me.
And now we have another picture. This is your parents.
Correct, their 50th wedding anniversary. They moved here in 1953 from Pennsylvania, Maryland. My dad grew up in Pennsylvania. My mother grew up in Cumberland, Maryland. And in 1953, one of the reasons people came to Ohio is because this is where the jobs were.
Sure.
There weren't very many in the small rural community that they were in. My mom's foster mother made a comment one time that my mother talked about hills in Ohio. And she said all a hill in Ohio is a knot in the road. Because back in Pennsylvania and Maryland, you see some mountains, some really steep mountains. But this was their 50th wedding anniversary back in 2003.
So then you move on to Florida,
Yes.
Spring Hill, Florida, 2006. Mike likes to call me up whenever the weather is really bad here because he knows the weather, and he likes to tell me about how the weather is where he's at. And, but he's very familiar with Wadsworth. So we've really enjoyed having you here back in town. I know your mother watches the show. I think there's one time we're on that's, I don't know if it's 1:30 in the morning. I can't remember what time it is. She doesn't watch that one,
right.
but I know she watches our show, and we appreciate all that she does. And she also worked in the community as well, if I recall.
Yeah, she worked at a Ohio Match Company for, from 1970 to 1986, about the time that it closed. And then she was a custodian here at the high school from about, I'm going to say 89 to 2011, somewhere in there. She put in 25 years service, so there are probably some folks in the community that do know her.
Yeah, and of course your father passed away a few years ago.
Yeah, back in 2005.
Yep. So, well, Mike, a lot of changes in Wadsworth. You said it's good to be back and everything, but what are some things when you come back you say, yeah, that's Wadsworth? I mean, sometimes towns, like you said, even Wadsworth a map looks the same.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of changes. But when you come back, what do you look for as far as for that sort of that hometown feel?
I'd say the downtown, and
Really?
that's something that's absent in so many towns anymore. The downtown's still there, the square, I still recall that. And of course I remember after school when I was in middle school, walking down to Brenneman's drugstore, getting a couple candy bars, and then walking them off on the way home. So that was always something I enjoyed. But yeah, the downtown, and especially it being lit up at Christmas time. I remember there were 2 trees right behind the gazebo years ago that had colored lights all over them. And I don't know if they still do that or not, but I always loved the downtown.
Well, the mayor and the city, they do a lot to try to keep the city together. And of course WCTV does as well. That's a very important part. So we're really glad that you can come in and be a part of the show today,
Thank you,
Mike.
enjoyed it.
All right, well, appreciate you watching the program today, and please come and visit our services at any opportunity you have. Thanks for watching. Before we close our program today, we'd like to take a moment and review this roadmap to heaven with you since the matter is so serious. There are many incorrect set of directions out there, and sadly so many people are following them. For example, some people have been given wrong turns. They believe things such as faith only, works only, or grace only. Or some attempt to change the order of the turns, being baptized before they even believe. Some people fail to realize what point they are on the map. Don't even open their Bibles yet, and they think they're saved already. As a person travels in a car or takes a hike, it has to follow the proper directions, so we must follow the proper directions to heaven. Let's take a look at the directions on our roadmap to heaven here. You have to look at these passages in your Bible for yourself. We'll just list the steps, the turns on the way. First is to believe or to have faith. And then number 2, to repent, to turn away from sin. Number 3 is to confess that Jesus is the Son of God. Number 4 is immersion, or to be baptized, which is a burial in water to have your sins washed away. And then you're added to the church by the Lord, not by a group of people, or not by giving some kind of testimonial experience or things like that. And then once you're added, you need to serve and worship the Lord faithfully all the days of your life. And the key word's faithfully. You don't waver. And that's very important. We need to keep in mind, too, that in Noah's day there was a big flood, and only people in the ark were saved from the flood. The same is true today. There is no salvation outside the Lord's church. Where are you on the roadmap to heaven? Thanks for watching our program. Please let us know if we can assist you with further information for your journey.